And we're live. Welcome to the new episode of Ask Me About My Draculas. If you're unfamiliar with the show, we are explaining supernatural-related movies, television, and books. I am your host, Kel McDonald, and I draw comics that you can find at kelmcdonald.com.
And I'm Ma'at Crook, and I do a lot of awesome stuff that you could find. One of my places you can find stuff is peapod.org.
And our guest today is...
I'm Cullen Bunn. I am a comic book writer. I write The Six Gun and Brides of Helheim for Oni Press, and I write some books for Marvel and DC as well. And you can find out more about me at cullenbunn.com.
Yay!
And this week we are talking about Captain Chronos Vampire Hunter, which neither Ma'at or I have seen, so it's all up to Cullen to explain it to us.
That's great. I don't think I've seen it in 10 years. So
That's perfect. Ma'at, do you want to say what you think it's about first, or should I go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I got a glimpse on a Google search on it like 2 weeks ago, and this is what I remember. One of the pictures I saw, which is this very long, flowing-haired dude with holding a knife in front of his face that reflects back a lady's eyes. That's the only image I remember, and that gave me no real clue. Except for some reason the title makes me think of like space vampires. It looks 70s, which is awesome. And yeah, so space vampires that also have medieval type weapons.
interesting.
Okay. Well, what I think it's about is because Chronos is sort of time-related, I'm going to assume that this man leads an army of time travelers that try to find vampires in history and kill them.
Oh, that's good, Kel.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
All right. What's it really about?
You should write that down. Yeah, so that is not what it's about. It does not have any science. Does not have any science fiction or time travel or space qualities to it. Although you would think it would with Chronos. I agree that the name. I think they just picked a name that sounded sort of ominous, I guess.
They thought it sounded cool.
That's what it is. So Captain Chronos, and like I said, I haven't seen this movie in 10 years. I would guess. It was probably the last movie I bought on VHS. And before I bought the VHS, which was re-released, sometime in the 90s or whatever, I probably hadn't seen it since I was a kid. But I remember, so I'm not an expert on this movie. I haven't read books on Captain Chronos or anything like that. But I remember as a kid, it was past my bedtime, and I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and I crawled through the living room, and I hid behind a couch while my older brother and sister watched this movie, and it terrified me as a kid. So it's always kind of stuck with me. And that image that you drew of the holding the sword up in front of his eyes, that's the image that. When I think of Captain Chronos Vampire Hunter, that's the image I always. It's the first thing that pops into my head. But yeah, so it was a movie made by Hammer Productions, which in the 60s and 70s made a lot of really garishly colored, really bold vampire movies. They brought Christopher Lee and.
So, I know that in the Christopher Lee Dracula movies, they do this sort of weird filter thing where there's like red around the edge of each like shot with Dracula in it. Do they do that at all in Captain Chronos?
I don't think they did that in this one. I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember that visually. I mean, visually, what I do remember is, like all the other Hammer movies, it was really bright. I mean, the colors were really, really popped, and the blood was bright red.
Yeah.
I mean, an insane color red. But this was, I think, one of the last movies they made before they kind of went belly up for a while. I guess they're back now because I think that there's a couple of movies that have come out in the past couple of years that they've produced. But this was in 74, I think, is when Captain Chronos, 72, 74, somewhere right in there. It was intended to be part of a series. They wanted Captain Chronos to be their sort of like their James Bond with vampires. There was always going to be more Captain Chronos adventures if the studio had, they hadn't had financial difficulties.
So why does Captain Chronos hunt vampires?
Well, he is an English soldier, and he just hates vampires. There's a line somewhere. There's a line somewhere in the movie where he says, and this is really the only backstory we get on Captain Chronos, is he says, "I was bitten by a vampire and I survived." So I know, so we know that he fought a vampire at some point in the past and survived, and he hooked up with this hunchback professor named. I looked his name up because I knew it was a great name, but I couldn't remember. It was a Hieronymus Grost.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome.
And he's this hunchback professor with glasses, and he kind of played on the gothic horror movie hunchback trope. He was always sort of this hideous creature that was maybe a little simple, but Professor Grost was really smart. He knew everything about vampires. And they traveled the country, and there's a line where this movie has a number of wonderful one-liners that have stuck with me for years, because there's a line where someone is questioning Professor Grost's knowledge of vampires, and Captain Chronos says what he doesn't know about vampirism wouldn't fill a flea's codpiece.
That's an interesting way to put it.
That's pretty much the dialogue for this entire movie. That's all that kind of really old, this really melodramatic, very
absurdist.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't think they thought it was absurdist at all. I thought they thought they were making the coolest vampire movie of all.
So they only hunt vampires in England. They don't travel the world to hunt.
Well, I'm assuming if the movie had continued, they would have traveled a little more. I think it's in sort of a nameless place, nameless village. I don't remember them ever saying what village they're in this movie. So I think that it starts with there are a series of young pretty teenage girls who are being attacked by a shadowy figure, and after they are attacked, they end up as withered old hags that quickly die. So there's something stalking this village and draining these young women of their essence, and then they grow quickly old. They quickly grow old, and then they fall over dead.
So these vampires, they're not necessarily drinking blood. They're like sucking the youth out of people.
They do something with blood in this, but as Professor Grost points out, there are many different forms of vampires in the world, and there some drink blood and some steal life essence, and some eat flesh, and they quickly establish that the vampire in this movie is just one of many types of vampire. They were really trying to set up a series right off the bat. Right off the bat, they were ready to set up a Chronos series. I think that was interesting for them too, because they'd done so many vampire movies at that point. And they were all, famously was all the Count Dracula movies. So they wanted to do something a little different from the traditional Count Dracula. And they had done another movie, which if I had thought about earlier, I would have maybe mentioned either, called The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires.
I haven't heard of that one either.
Awesome.
That was another Hammer movie, but it was a Hammer movie and maybe Golden Harvest. But anyway, it was a Dracula kung fu movie that Hammer had done. So they had done some things to try to expand the vampire mythology. But you should look that one up too. It's well worth checking out. So they were just trying to do something a little different with vampires, something that would that the viewers wouldn't expect, I guess. And the thing with these women is they were all these young women who were getting killed. They were all good girls, and they were all they said they all carried crosses, and there's no reason that an evil spirit should have been able to kill them. But in the first couple of attacks, we see that although we don't see the attacker, whoever the girl is seeing quickly mesmerizes them and kind of seduces them with some sort of magical power before the girl then screams off camera and blood spatters. So there is some blood, because they do spatter a lot of blood in the movie too.
Does the blood like explode like a geyser? Because I'm just thinking of like that scene in Dracula Dead and Loving It, where it just keeps coming and coming.
It's not quite that. It's not quite that extreme. It's more just a spatter from off camera, and some dripping blood off of leaves. There's a cool scene where there's blood on a church bell that's dripping down, and I think that was kind of an interesting image. But it's not geyser. It's not like Evil Dead geysers of blood.
Okay. So this like vampire hunter guy, like we start off with the girls getting eaten. How does he like find out what's going on? Is he just like reading newspapers, or does someone call him up?
Someone summons him. His buddy Marcus, an old war buddy, is the doctor in this village where the girls are being attacked. So he knows that Chronos is now a vampire hunter. I guess he calls it's kind of weird, because he calls Chronos knowing he can deal with vampires, but then he seems kind of surprised that Captain Chronos knows anything about vampires or believes in vampires. But nonetheless, his old war buddy, the town doctor, calls him into town, and it's Chronos and Professor Grost, and then along the way they meet a girl who's in a stockade for dancing on a Sunday, and so they rescue her. Captain Chronos rescues her, and she follows them around and joins their little band.
So not only is this vampires in this village, but it is also apparently the town from Footloose.
Maybe, yeah. She was dancing on a Sunday, and she was played by Caroline Munro, who was sort of a scream queen back in the 70s. I remember her most from one of the Sinbad movies, the Ray Harryhausen Sinbad movies. But she's a very, very beautiful woman, of course, who quickly falls in love with the mystery that is Captain Chronos.
So you said that he's like James Bond, but fights vampires. Does his love interest of the movie have a very ridiculous, like, punny name?
No. Her name is Carla, so she doesn't have a terrible name. But he's pretty smarmy in sort of this James Bond way. There's a line where he's getting ready to leave Carla behind, and she says, well, I'll accompany you if you'll have me. And he gets this sort of smirk on his face, says, oh, I'll have you. And then it's he's the. And you got to keep in mind, that was probably that was the height of rated R movies back in '72. Like, oh my gosh, how lurid!
What was the name of the professor again?
Hieronymus Grost.
Okay, here's my picture of Hieronymus Grost talking about all the different types of vampires. You got blood vampires, you got the essence-sucking vampires, you got Bunnicula, and then you got Kevin Bacon.
Of course.
Yeah.
He just needs a little top hat, and he'd be perfect.
Awesome. And then this is Chronos.
That's pretty great.
All the time.
Yeah, he would need. He was always smoking these cigarellos or something that he said were Chinese in origin.
Okay.
But there was some question. There seemed to be some question of what he was actually smoking.
Yeah, it's actually questionable in my drawing now too.
Yeah, that's perfect. Perfect.
And what is it? A top hat or a bowler that the?
It was a tiny top hat.
Okay, a tiny.
It was a tiny top hat.
Done.
So I'm trying to So okay, so you say that it's an old war buddy. What war did this guy fight in?
I do not know. I can't. I was trying to figure out to think what time period it was. I mean, it's. I have no idea what war it was. They probably make some reference to it. This was. All I know, there was a lot of horse riding and sword fighting in this movie. So it was.
But there were top hats, so it can't be that long ago. It seems like.
I wouldn't assume that they understood that. Yeah. So this was this was really, I think Captain Chronos was called Captain Chronos because they wanted it to be sort of their Captain Blood, and if they could have called it Captain Blood, they would have, because I mean there are scenes where I don't think he swings from chandeliers, but he does jump on a lot of tables, and there's a lot of swashbuckling in this movie.
So he's a vampire hunting pirate.
He's sort of pirate-ish, I guess, but yeah, he's a vampire hunting swordsman. And yeah, I don't know the exact time frame. Olden days, I'm sure is what the.
Okay, so it's in vague olden days.
Yeah, it may have had a little placard that came up and said "Olden Days."
It's in the same time period as the Castlevania movies, which is generic olden days.
Yes, that sounds about right. I don't even think they use. I don't think he ever pulls a gun or anything. So I think he. I mean, a gun wouldn't do him any good against a vampire, but.
No. Not if he's a real vampire hunter.
That's right. That's right.
So what's this love interest lady?
Other than the fact that she danced on a Sunday, we don't know a whole lot about her. Although she does quickly fall in love with Captain Chronos, and she ends up helping them on their search. She helps them hunt for the vampire, and then, of course, at the end, she becomes the bait for the vampire to lure the vampire out. But other than that, there's really, I don't know, there was a lot to her other than she was a very beautiful woman. And of course, at the end, after she's tagged along with Captain Chronos through these hellish events, in the last minute of the movie, it's pretty much well, I gotta go, so long. And she says, I'll remember you on lonely nights, and they part ways without much more than that.
Oh, jeez. Because her importance was just being pretty and being bait.
I think so. I think that may have been the nature of the time when the movies came out, and and really the Gothic. Hammer was. They were doing the Gothic, the Gothic horror movie, and that did pretty well. I remember though, she kind of stood up to Chronos a little bit. There were some moments where I think someone says, talking about Chronos to her, they say, "Well, tell us something about your master," and she's like, "He's no master of mine. I'm free." So, I think they tried to make her seem like she kind of stood up for herself, but she still walks into the barn on the middle of the dark and stormy night and tosses her robe aside for Captain Chronos to have his way with. Well, he said right off the bat that he was going to have her, so.
Wow.
But she was bold enough to dance on a Sunday, though.
Clearly, this is a lady that knows how to have a good time.
That's right.
So is that how the movie ends? Is that
That's how they part ways. You know, between that, there's a whole bunch of vampire hunting. You know, so they, you know, there's a mystery involved. One is who's killing these girls.
Does the vampire in question, does he have like a personality, or is he just like a monster of the week and you don't really get anything about him other than...
You don't really get a whole lot about the vampire up until the end of the movie. As the story unfolds, they kind of reveal that there's sort of this aristocratic family that lives near the village, and there's something creepy going on, you know, with this family. There's the patriarch of this family died 7 years ago, and they go and there's a very ornate statue of him in the cemetery with the words, you know, the world's greatest swordsman, like on the, you know, you know, he died of the plague, but it says on his tombstone, you know, greatest swordsman in the world. So you know there's something going to happen with this guy.
Yeah, and that it's going to be swordplay of some sort.
Right, right. So they're sort of they do actually a pretty good job of throwing in some red herrings, because they've got that, and they let that loom out there, and then you meet his children, his son, who is creepy just for being sort of, you know, the kind of rich person that you just know there's something they're doing something ghastly behind the scenes, and that he portrays that quite well, and his daughter, who whenever we see her, is always talking about how she cannot stand the thought of growing old, and how old age frightens her, and then their mother, who has rapidly aged since the death, who was once very beautiful but is now like, not just old and haggard, but hideously old and haggard and bedridden. That is, you know, they keep her in the house and won't let anyone see her. So they put in some, you know, red herrings. You're wondering if, you know, it's the father is the vampire somehow, or if the son is up to creepy business, or the daughter who, the daughter who doesn't, you know, wants to be beautiful for her entire life, if she's there, and you wonder what's going on with the old woman in the bed. So they put in a lot of those red herrings, you know, in the story. So they arrive in town, and, you know, they're accosted by villagers. Someone wealthy pays a number of villagers to try to kill Captain Chronos and Professor Grost in a bar. So there's somebody. So they know they're getting close to finding the vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And they do some interesting things. Professor Grost buries dead frogs all throughout the area, because according to folklore, and then they dig them up the next day, because according to folklore, if a vampire is in the area, a dead frog will come back to life.
Good to know.
Yeah, right? That's kind of cool.
The thing with the nobles just reminds me of, like, there used to be a sort of urban legend, like, folklore thing where the way to end a drought is if a vampire took a bath.
Oh, so that's kind of, those are cool. Yeah, those are cool.
So there was one, like, prince of some small area that basically ordered all his noblemen to take baths whenever there was a drought.
Just in case there were vampires?
It was like, you know, being a vampire, it happens, and I'm not going to out you, so just everyone has to take a bath all at once.
Nice. I like that. Yeah, yeah, it's okay if you're a vampire. But
we just need to end this drought.
Right. Yeah, and that, you know, they could have done a little more of that in the movie, I think. There were, you know, I like that kind of folklore stuff, you know, and the frog thing is an actual legend. I have since looked it up for other stuff that I was working on, and that's actually a vampire folklore. I didn't know about the ending of drought, though. That's kind of cool. Yeah. But yeah, so they search for this vampire, and along the way, Captain Chronos' doctor friend gets bitten by a vampire, bitten by the vampire in question, and he, of course, in fine form in a horror movie, he doesn't tell anyone he's been bitten by this vampire because
he turn into a vampire by the end.
he does. They go out. They actually set this this elaborate watch system where they're following this pretty teenage girl through the woods.
More bait.
Yeah, as bait. They don't tell her she's bait. They just follow her through the woods. And, you know, she passes Captain Chronos, and she passes Carla, and she passes Professor Grost, and then she goes up to the area where the doctor is is watching the road or whatever, and you can see that she recognizes someone off camera, and then this bat flies onto her face.
Is it a real bat, or is it like a cheesy rubber bat that's
super
her?
cheesy rubber bat. Super cheesy rubber bat. But it flies onto her face and kills her. And they reveal later that the bat was the doctor. He was the one who killed this girl.
Is he a bloodsucker or an essence sucker?
Well, she turned old, so I guess he was an essence sucker as well. There was blood too, though. She was carrying eggs. This movie did a really good job. I told you they had a church bell with blood dripping off of it, and there were flowers with blood on them. She was carrying eggs in a basket or something, and the eggs get smashed, and there's blood oozing into the eggs. You know,
That's awesome.
It's kind of they did a good job with those sort of weird images.
That's like more like Youth Destroyed.
Right, yeah. Youth is, yeah, exactly. Oh, that's pretty. It is. I never thought about it.
Bam, symbolism.
Wow, my mind is blown. But anyway, they eventually find out that their friend is a vampire. Interesting. They find out he's a vampire, and he says, "You know what? We don't know how to kill this vampire. We don't know what the secrets of these vampires are. Why don't you test out ways to kill me? Tie me down, and you can test out all your ways to kill a vampire on me."
So he's still not quite all the way turned?
Yeah. I guess only when in a moment of weakness he turned completely. But then he kind of resists, and they tie him up, and they test they test out fire on him, and holy water, and finally find out these vampires are susceptible to cold steel. There's a cross. The doctor's wearing. There's no aversion to the cross in this movie. The vampires can see the cross and deal. They kill somebody in a church, I think, so they have no problem with religious symbols. But the doctor's wearing a cross himself, and Captain Chronos stumbles or hugs him or something. Basically, gets up, gets onto him and pushes the cross into his heart, and that's how he kills him. It's a steel cross, and that's how they find out the steel can kill this vampire. So they melt that cross down into a sword that Captain Chronos is going to use to kill the vampires once and for all.
That's a dangerous pendant.
Are vampires secretly fairies in this world?
They definitely have sort of that fairy cold steel allergy. So yeah, maybe they are. But yeah, so they forge this sword. Professor Grost forges a sword because in addition to all other things, he can forge weapons very quickly. And they realize they see the daughter of this family. They start. She draws their attention, and and Captain Chronos starts to believe the daughter is the vampire. She has all the all the clues of a vampire. She's young and she's pretty and she's averse to aging and she's wealthy and she could have paid these thugs to run them out of town. So they assume that it's and her mother, who was supposed to be one of the most beautiful people in the village, is apparently apparently been stricken over the last few years with something that's made her age very rapidly. So they start following the daughter, and this is when they ask Carla to go into the house and be the bait to to they don't burst into the house. They need proof, I guess, or something. But they ask Carla to go in and sort of play a ruse on this family. She like knocks on their door and says she's running from her father, who wanted her to marry a man that she didn't love, and she loves someone else, so she needs a place to stay for the night. And the son and daughter let her come into the house to stay in the house that night.
Because they're nice people.
Well, the son looks at her like he's very creepy, just in the way he's watching her. And then there's like, it had to be a good 60 seconds of the daughter standing on the stairs, blowing out candles on a chandelier and watching,
wow.
Watching her as she blows out candles.
Wow. They're not nice people, just creepy.
No, really creepy aristocrats.
Yeah.
So Carla stays the night there, and as she's sleeping on the couch out by the fire, she stays in the living room so that she can see the windows, I guess, or that Captain Chronos can see her. She stays there, and as she's staying there, someone comes down the stairs and puts a woman's hand touches the back of the couch, and Carla wakes up and jumps up in the seat. You don't see who it is, but she becomes mesmerized by whoever she's looking at.
Oh, so they do live there.
They do.
They
do.
There.
And then it was actually, it seemed really creepy when I was a kid. Then they cut to the mother's bedroom, and there's an old mask of an old woman, and we realize the mother has been wearing this hideous mask. I guess whenever anybody visits, she puts on this ghastly old woman's mask. And we realize that she is the vampire all along.
Mm-hmm.
And she's beautiful once again, and she's been charming these women and taking their essence to not only maintain her youth, but to raise her dead husband from the grave, who he's back as well as a vampire.
Oh, like
so
recently back, or he's been back for a while?
She says at some point, it's taken me 7 years to get all of my ducks in a row to make this happen. And her son and daughter come down the stairs and are aghast to see their mother in youthful appearance. They're completely innocent in all of this. As creepy as they are, they're innocent. And she says, "You should have known, because my family is," and she names her family. She says, "and we have ways of getting what we want," basically implying they're a family of witches or warlocks or something. But she says she's brought her husband back from the dead, and he comes out, and he's still plague-ridden on one side of his face. There's plague, pox, and everything on one side, but he's handsome on the other side of his face. and she offers Carla to her husband, says, "Take him, go ahead, replenish your life. With this, you can be whole once more. The flush of youth," they say that a lot. The flush of youth will bring you back. And of course, this is the moment where Captain Chronos swoops in and gives her husband a kick and sends him sprawling. And the wife turns to Chronos and is going to use her mesmerizing powers on him. And that's when he holds his sword up, and it's so shiny that he holds it up over his eyes, and it's so shiny that it reflects her gaze back at her, and she hypnotizes herself. So she stands there. There's a room. She's hypnotized everybody in the room now except Captain Chronos and her husband. So there's a room full of people standing, perfectly still, and she's one of them now because he has reflected her essence back to her.
Oh, but the husband is the best swordsman in the world.
That's right. So Chronos and her husband then have a duel, swordsman to swordsman duel throughout the grand hall there. And Chronos, says, "This is the sword of God, and it will cut you. This is the one thing that'll cut you down." And they duke it out. throughout the back and forth through the mansion, jumping on tables and ducking and diving between hypnotized people, and finally Chronos is defeated. The vampire is a better swordsman than Chronos, and he disarms him and preaches to him for a little bit about how he's going to kill him, and takes him up on the stairs and says, now this is the moment where you die, and that's when Professor Grost comes in and grabs the sword from the ground and Chronos, and he hurls the sword to Captain Chronos, and he catches it and quickly kills his enemy, and when he does, and then that breaks the vampire's mesmerism for some reason, and she comes charging at them with her hands like claw. Well, she doesn't charge; she stalks towards them like this, and they just stab her. I mean, it's very
early because.
But she just walks real slowly and just stab her, and she falls over, and the two vampires rot to dust.
Wow.
And then Chronos says, "See you later, Carla. I'm a rambling man. I got to get out of town," and he leaves her.
I'll think about you every time I'm alone.
I'll think about you on lonely nights. And that was it. I can't say it's my favorite vampire movie. It's one I think about a lot, and I think about that image of that sword is that reflective sword, super reflective sword. I have fond memories of it because of sneaking in and watching it from behind the couch, and it scared me when I was a kid. I don't think it would scare anyone, child or otherwise, now.
Because time is different. The red and white thing was pretty huge back in the 70s. Like, it was a big deal they were doing it. Even though most of the movies, or all of them, were very B-rated looking. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Also, you mentioning that, like, this being rated R, but wasn't really, like, something that would be rated R today.
No.
It's because PG-13 didn't exist back then.
Right.
I think.
I mean, I don't even know if it would be PG. I guess it would have to be PG-13. But there's except for there's some minor gore. The blood spatters. There's a little bit of sex, but it's really the kind where they're standing in a completely dark room and the moonlight falls across the side a hip.
Yeah, so it would definitely probably be like PG-13 these days.
Yeah, at most, like I said, it's one of those things. I think nowadays people would probably think it was pretty boring. Hammer re-released a bunch of their movies on VHS in the '90s, and that's when I got them again to have. There were several of their movies that I picked up at that time, just because I loved the old Hammer.
Yeah.
I had fond memories of the old Hammer movies.
Yeah, I like the Hammer movies and the Roger Corman movies. Wait.
I like them. To me, they're completely. The Hammer movies are the classier of those two. But no, I've always. I think Hammer may have re-released them around the time that Sleepy Hollow came out, the Tim Burton movie.
Oh yeah.
Because that was that was obviously inspired by the Hammer movies. It was supposed to be his take on a Hammer movie.
Yeah, which I didn't get at the time, surprisingly.
Yeah,
but
well,
the second time I watched it, I got it.
Yeah, so they may have released them around that time even. Maybe there was a little resurgence or something. I don't even think they're on. They may be on DVD now. I don't know. Haven't looked.
Do you still own it? Do you still own Captain Chronos?
I'm sure somewhere in my garage there is the VHS copy of Captain Chronos. It was in one of those really big clamshells, not even a cardboard, not the cardboard sleeve, but the big, heavy plastic clamshells.
I'm looking it up on Wikipedia to see if it is on DVD. There is a novelization of it that was released in 2011.
What?
Oh.
According to Wikipedia, it was a novelization of the film. It was released and written by Guy Adams under the title Chronos and was published by Arrow Publishing in associate with Hammer and Random House Group in 2011.
Awesome.
Wow. Maybe they're angling for a Captain Chronos resurgence. Maybe they're gonna finally live up to that promise of a series of Captain Chronos movies.
I would watch it. Just from what you explained, I totally want to watch the movie now.
Yeah, like I said, it's probably a little slower than our memory sweetens movies. It's probably a little more boring than I remember it being, but I still liked it.
I don't know how Kel is really good at that too, at remembering movies that you watch one or two times.
Yeah, I've always been,
years ago.
yeah, I've always been. And I was quoting things I may have gotten wrong, the quotes, but I think I'm pretty close. Yeah, I've always been pretty good at remembering those movies like that, especially if they. Captain Chronos is one, I can tell friends and they'll groan that I'm talking about Captain Chronos. If it's a movie that other people think I shouldn't like, I'll remember it a lot more clearly.
Now that I'm looking at pictures of it, I see that it is sort of vague, olden times. When you were first explaining it, because you said James Bond, I was assuming it was like Vampire Hunter in the 60s.
Oh, yeah, I get that. Yeah, no.
But, yeah.
Can you pull up some of the pictures, Kel?
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, all of the Hammer movies, I think, were set in this vague olden time, except they did like a 1970s Dracula movie.
So, I got pulled up the poster for the original, like, advertising it coming out.
Oh, wow. Oh, is that top right, the mom?
Yes, that's that hideous face is the mom.
And then here is the image with the sword.
Hey!
Reflected lady eyes.
Really, yeah, you were really close on it.
If I can find it. Mine is more straight on, though, and the eyes are bigger. She's closer here.
It works.
And then he's got some great 70s hair there.
Yeah.
Chronos was no joke. He was a stud. It's funny, he was, this action hero, and in 70, whatever it was, early 70s, an action hero now has to be this sort of ripped person. They have to.
The cover for the book?
Not the novel? Oh. But he was a pretty thin guy. He was a pretty slim guy, and he's without a shirt most of the. For a good part of the movie.
Wow.
I see Carla up there. There was an image of Carla, the lead.
Can you set the camera to stay on yours, Kel?
Oh, yeah.
For a little bit?
There's the lady there.
Oh, okay.
There's Carla.
She was very 70s, beautiful bombshell.
Oh, it is on DVD. This is the DVD cover.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. Funny enough, that's not Captain Chronos on the cover. That's his buddy, the doctor, the town doctor.
Okay.
Is the actor who played the doctor more famous now? Because it could be a situation like, if you look at DVDs of Caddyshack, it has like Bill Murray front and center, even though he's like a super minor character.
Maybe he is. I don't know. It's funny you say Bond girl for Caroline Munro. I think she was a Bond girl. I think she was in one of the Roger Moore Bond movies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I remember her from a Sinbad movie, but I'm pretty sure she was probably in a Bond movie as well.
I'm going to look up to see.
Yeah, she was in The Spy Who Loved Me in 1977.
That was one of my favorite ones when I was a kid.
Yeah, I don't know who she was. I can't remember who she would have been. But
Is there anything that has inspired your writing from Captain Chronos?
Maybe that frog thing shows up in. I wrote a vampire novella a while ago called Blood Feud, and that frog, the frog myth, and it didn't really dawn on me until I was thinking about the movie a few days ago. That frog, the frog thing shows up in Blood Feud. I have some frogs coming back to life because vampires are in the area. So maybe maybe a little bit. I like that that meshing of genres though. The horror movie with the swashbuckler movie. I think that's kind of nice, and I think I do a lot of that in my in my writing.
Mm-hmm. I found it interesting, Kel, that when you brought up the folktale, it was all. It was never considered that someone who was poorer than an aristocrat could possibly be a vampire. And in this story,
I feel like it would be pretty expensive to hide that you're a vampire from everyone. Like, because if you can't go out during the day, you need to have someone. You need to have dough to someone to do that.
Yeah. Also, poor folks just hated the rich folks, and they just had to make up stories about them. We still do it. We still make up stories about the rich folk.
Yeah. And the rich folk make a lot of stories up about the poor folk.
Right. So they've just got a little bit of they've learned their lesson. They're not going to let the vampire stories just be about them. If people would still believe that vampires existed, Twitter would be rife with people saying that rich folk are vampires. It'd be hashtags all over the place.
We should start that.
Who's the richest person we can talk about?
No, I think that it has to not only be rich but also eccentric.
Oh.
Because the vampirism would also explain weird behaviors. So, like, Kanye, perfect candidate for a vampire.
Well, come on, that guy's.
Because he's in a closet too.
That's R. Kelly, I think.
Yeah, that is. You're right.
No, Kanye's just the guy who's super full of himself.
But Kim Kardashian could be, if they were to redo a Captain Chronos movie, Kim Kardashian could be the daughter.
She could. I don't think I want to see that Captain Chronos remake. That's not. I'm not on board now. Take it back.
Madonna could be the mom.
Who could?
Madonna.
This is the worst fan casting I've ever heard.
I think Michelle Pfeiffer would be better.
That's why I'm not making movies.
Yeah,
Michelle Pfeiffer would be pretty good. She's done that before. She's acted in roles where she goes from being
basically her role in Stardust.
Yeah, that's the movie.
I don't know Stardust.
It's on Netflix.
I'm guessing by the title, it's about a cocaine ring in outer space. And
No, it's based off Neil Gaiman's short. That's
it's the Neil Gaiman Stardust. Sorry.
I didn't realize that was a Neil Gaiman. I've never read his.
Yeah, the end of the book is different than the movie, because it's sadder in the book. But yeah, no, the movie's alright. It's a lot of fun.
I like the idea of the space cocaine ring.
I like my idea of a time traveler that hunts vampires throughout history.
I think that's good, actually. I think you should do something with that.
And if you throw in, too, that there's pirates, that would work as well.
Time-traveling space pirate vampire hunter.
Nice.
They're done.
I'm certain that I'm surprised Hollywood's not calling you right this second.
You just need to write it, Cullen.
It sounds like it would be in my wheelhouse. It's the time travel thing that bothers me. Those stories are a nightmare.
Yeah, no, that would be why there's never, like, proof of any existence of vampires is because they always just get killed by time traveler. Who's erasing their existence from history.
But wouldn't that be a paradox? Because then if he killed them, then he
Why
would
would he
know
hunt?
what they were.
Time
Yeah.
travel's bad. If he kills them, if he kills all the vampires, he may have no reason to hunt vampires.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then,
We've
then-
gone for like an hour, so I think we should maybe wrap it up.
Okay.
As fun as time traveling vampire hunter discussion is good. Like we're kind of off the movie now and
Right.
going off into weird tangents.
well, thanks for talking to me, guys. Thanks for letting me talk about.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Now I want to go get that DVD and watch the movie.
I want to find it too.
Yeah, I can't imagine it's too expensive. It's probably a $5 DVD.
Unless it's like out of print.
Yeah, that's possible.
If it's because if they only briefly printed it, then it's probably like I don't know. I'm just thinking of like the Muppets Family Christmas was like on DVD for a very brief period of time, and now it's off DVD. So it's like if you go to Amazon, it's like $200.
Yeah,
Oh, jeez.
apparently Captain Chronos is on Blu-ray too, but it's $42.
What?
Yeah, $42 for Captain Chronos on
As
Blu-ray.
excited as I am to watch it, I don't know if that.
I'm not $42 excited.
Yeah.
$12.99 on DVD though.
How much on DVD?
$12.99.
Okay.
So that's a little more
Totally
reasonable.
reasonable.
Yeah, but no, thanks for letting me talk about Captain Chronos with you guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Like I said, after the fact, after we decided we were going to talk about this movie, there were other vampire movies that I thought of, but I stuck with Captain Chronos. I couldn't remember which ones were on your list, but now you guys should look into Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires.
Yeah.
And I didn't see Near Dark on your list.
I don't think it's on. We definitely haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah, you guys should
I
talk
haven't
about.
heard of it. I should look at it and see if
You
I've
should look
already
at Near
seen
Dark. That may be. Yeah, that's a great vampire movie too.
We also, while the show is called Ask Me About My Draculas, it's more just supernatural in general. Like,
I was told Dracula.
because like we've gone over Teen Wolf in a previous episode, and there are no vampires in Teen Wolf.
Not yet.
Or are there? Wait, Teen Wolf the TV series or Teen Wolf
Both,
the movie?
because they have the same name, so they're in the same episode.
Oh, interesting. I've never seen anything except the original movie, so I don't
The
know.
MTV one is really, really silly, but a lot of fun.
All right. Well,
They just fight other shapeshifters, basically.
You could watch the Ask Me About My Draculas.
Yeah, you can watch the
I watched
episode about
I watched the Castlevania episode. I did not know there was that much to know about Castlevania.
I didn't either. Thank you again, Colin.
Oh, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Alright, well, thanks everyone for watching. Catch us 2 weeks from now. Bye.
Bye.